The audience bursts into laughter under the bright studio lights as the host, renowned for her sharp wit and daring provocations, sneers at Leonardo DiCaprio's faith. With a smug smile, she jeers, "Leo, do you really believe there's someone up there watching over you, especially after all you've endured?" The laughter swells. The camera shifts to DiCaprio, who remains silent, his fingers gently tracing the small cross hanging from his neck. His expression is serene, unwavering. He doesn't respond, nor does he defend himself. He simply feels. A tense, measured voice cuts through the mirth, a prelude to a moment no one anticipated, one that would not just test the host's skepticism, but perhaps transform her worldview. Leonardo DiCaprio isn't merely a Hollywood icon. He is a man who has faced unimaginable loss and yet stands tall, not by clinging to fame or force, but by something the world often mocks: faith. Stay with us to see how this unfolds, and before we dive in, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. We read every one of them. The studio resembles an arena, with crisscrossing lights reflecting off sleek dark walls. The audience buzzes, their applause echoing like the roar before a championship bout. The show is famous for controversy, for transforming interviews into gladiatorial banter. The host strides on stage amid thunderous cheers. "Ladies and gentlemen," she proclaims, he's an actor, producer, motorcycle enthusiast, a living legend, and, surprisingly, a bit of a monk. Please welcome Leonardo DiCaprio. The ovation is deafening. DiCaprio enters calmly in dark jeans, a black blazer over a simple tee, the cross pendant his lone flourish. He nods in greeting, offering a soft smile. No grandiose gesture, no fanfare, just a man at ease on familiar ground. The first few questions tread the expected path: career highlights, behind-the-scenes anecdotes, upcoming projects. DiCaprio answers thoughtfully, keeping the mood light as the audience laughs along. Yet, as often happens on this show, the tone begins to shift. With a sly grin, the host leans in. "You strike me as grounded, maybe even spiritual. But after everything Hollywood has put you through, do you truly believe in miracles?" The crowd laughs again. DiCaprio's eyes remain steady. He stays silent, listening. Silence, after all, can be its own reply. He bows his head briefly, brushing the cross against his chest. The camera zooms in to capture its gentle sway with his movement. Then he looks up, calm and direct, still without a word. Another joke follows, mocking faith as a desperate escape, and the laughter returns. But something in the room has shifted. A subtle crack in the show's polished armor. A more pointed question comes next. "So, you really think someone's watching over you?" DiCaprio pauses. The audience holds its breath. One wrong word, and he'd be the next punchline. One honest word, and everything might change. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he says, "If I'm still here after everything, it wasn't luck." His words drop like stones in still water. The laughter dies. The crowd exchanges uneasy glances. The cross on his chest suddenly feels less like jewelry and more like a statement. The host scrambles to recover with a joke, but the room remains hushed. DiCaprio sits unmoved, his presence itself a testament. What no one realized was that tonight, his quiet conviction would spark a turning point. The lights dim ever so slightly. The studio's usual buzz recedes into a space hovering between discomfort and reflection. The host attempts to regain control, leaning forward with a forced grin. "Well, Leo," she quips, "religion is just a fairy tale for people afraid to face reality. All that divine plan nonsense. Comforting, sure, but hardly real." The audience laughs, but the sound feels hollow. Leonardo DiCaprio remains motionless, fingers brushing the cross at his throat, as if drawing strength from it. A calm, distant narrator's voice interrupts. What viewers saw was a man under fire, but what they didn't see was the journey that brought him here. Grainy monochrome images flash on the big screen. DiCaprio at a funeral, standing by an open casket. A hospital corridor blurred by tears. A lone subway rider staring out a rain-streaked window. Each frame hints at loss, the death of a loved one, the ache of goodbye, the solitude of grief. Back in the studio, the host, sensing her jokes have lost their bite, switches gears. "You keep that cross on for fashion, right? A little street-style accessory?" She laughs nervously. The audience stirs uneasily. It's symbolic, nothing more. Leonardo leans forward, voice steady, but edged with quiet conviction. I don't wear it for fashion. I wear it for memory, for forgiveness, and for survival. His words are intimate, as though spoken in the dark when no one else is listening. The camera lingers on the pendant. It no longer seems a mere trinket, but a testament. Silence settles. No applause, no chatter. The host opens her mouth, then closes it. The audience holds its breath. The narrator returns. In a world obsessed with loud opinions, there is something sacred about someone who simply lives what they believe. The host glances down at her hands. Her practiced poise falters. Her smile wavers. Finally, she confesses in a low, trembling voice. When I was a kid, I used to pray every night. I'd close my eyes and beg for a sign that I was enough, that I mattered. But nothing ever came. I stopped believing. But maybe I was never really listening. Her eyes glisten. The studio lights feel too bright, too intrusive. A hush falls. No camera movement, no soundtrack. Just two people, stripped of artifice, sharing a moment of raw truth before millions. No one who reaches for faith in the dark is ever truly alone, DiCaprio replies softly, meeting her gaze without judgment. Sometimes the hardest part of healing is admitting you need it. The host exhales, nods almost imperceptibly, as if thanking him. The narrator's closing words fade in. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the doorway to empathy, connection, and change. For a beat, nothing happens. Then the host, voice steadier now, offers a small, genuine smile. Thank you, Leonardo. Maybe tonight I learned something real. The camera pulls back. The lights brighten. The audience quietly applauds, not out of obligation, but from a place of shared recognition. What began as spectacle has become a quiet revolution in that studio, a reminder that stillness can speak louder than any punchline. Just hours after the interview aired, a clandestine video began circulating online, shot during the commercial break by someone backstage. In hushed tones, a producer is heard. "We need more of that God talk. Have her push him, get a reaction. That's what makes clips go viral." A second voice cautions, "Are you sure he won't push back?" The answer comes with a confident laugh. That's the beauty of it. He's too polite to fight. Within minutes, the clip explodes across social media. Viewers are stunned by the revelation of the show's manipulation. A former producer, visibly shaken, steps forward in a live video. "I worked on that program for 3 years. They scripted every jibe at Faith, aiming for outrage. Tonight's episode was a setup from the top." He holds up internal memos and script notes that outline exact lines mocking spirituality. The internet responds in kind. Under the hashtag #RespectFaith, users from all walks of life share their admiration for Leonardo DiCaprio's composure. Musicians, actors, scientists, even those with no religious affiliation, praise the power of his silence. "Strength isn't always loud," writes one fan. "Silence can be the loudest statement," echoes another. Meanwhile, the host's social channels fall eerily quiet, until a late-night tweet emerges. "Some moments on live TV aren't scripted. Tonight, I was human, and I'm still processing what that means." Her admission sparks an outpouring of empathy rather than scorn. Commenters commend her honesty. "Thank you for sharing your truth. We've all been there. Vulnerability is brave." Traditional media soon picks up the story. News outlets dissect every angle: the ethics of ambush interviews, the conflict between entertainment and empathy, and the public's yearning for authenticity. Faith leaders weigh in on morning shows, psychologists analyze the emotional impact of moral stillness, and satirical programs cover the saga with unexpected reverence. Through it all, DiCaprio remains silent. No official statements, no press releases, only one Instagram post. A close-up photo of his cross pendant resting on a closed book, captioned simply, "Sometimes silence is the most powerful answer." That image is shared millions of times. Viewers write their own reflections beneath it. "My grandma always said, 'Quiet faith speaks volumes.' I needed this today." Healing begins in the silence. Days later, the host grants an interview to another network. Gone is the stage persona. Her voice is soft, stripped of artifice. "I believed I was in control," she admits, "but Leonardo's calm showed me the power of presence over provocation. I walked into that studio seeking a spectacle. I left with a revelation. Remarkably, instead of cancel culture fury, the public embraces her journey. Viewers see their own doubts mirrored in her confession. Social media fills with stories under number, "My faith is not a fault." A woman posts a photo of her childhood pendant, writing, "I mocked it for years, now I let it hang." A student confesses, "I never believed in anything until I learned to believe in compassion." A father from Brazil shares, "My mother prayed for me every night. Today, I'm grateful." Scientists and therapists weigh in too. A neurologist explains that watching DiCaprio's stillness triggers physiological responses similar to sacred music: lowered heart rate, reduced stress. A therapist notes, "We're unaccustomed to witnesses who stand with us instead of arguing with us." That silence became a cultural reset. Back in the studio, the host makes a final post on her own account. Content can wait. Some conversations are too important. Thank you, Leonardo. DiCaprio never replies publicly, but one day later, his team shares a photo. A candle flickers next to a small note that reads, "You were heard." The narrator's closing reflection plays over a montage of quiet moments around the world. A child watching the clip on a hospital bed, a group of strangers sharing a silent vigil on a rooftop, a commuter pausing on a subway platform. All are bound by a newfound hush, a collective remembering that sometimes the most profound truths are spoken in silence. Less than a week later, the network quietly announced a second live appearance, this time with no teasing taglines, no biting promos, only the promise of a conversation that moved the world. On the night of the broadcast, fans queued around the block, clutching signs not of protest, but of presence. Silence speaks. Faith is not a fault. More Leo, less noise. When Leonardo DiCaprio re-entered the studio, he wore the same simple outfit and cross pendant, his calm demeanor unchanged. The host greeted him with a tentative smile. "Thank you for coming back," she began, voice softer, more measured. "How have you felt since our last conversation?" But before he could answer, the studio lights pulsed once, twice, and then cut out entirely. Monitors flickered, microphones fell silent. For 10 seconds, the entire set existed in a void of darkness and stillness, so profound it felt almost sacred. The audience froze. The crew hesitated. Even the hum of machinery seemed to vanish. Then, as suddenly as it had occurred, the lights returned. Screens rebooted. Sound resumed. The host sat motionless, her eyes wide, voice caught in her throat. DiCaprio remained seated, hands resting lightly on his lap, the pendant resting against his chest, illuminated by the emergency glow. No applause, no chatter, just a shared intake of breath. Finally, DiCaprio spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't about winning a debate, it was about touching a soul. His words hung in the air, not as lines delivered to cameras, but as a confession offered to every person in that room. A narrator's voice, gentle, almost reverent, took over. Moments like this defy logic. Engineers later blamed a technical reboot. Technicians cited a voltage surge. Yet witnesses say it felt like a moment of grace, a heartbeat of silence that reminded us how rare true stillness has become. The clip of those 10 seconds, the power cut, the hush, the unspoken communion, burst across the internet. It was replayed, paused, and dissected millions of times. Talk shows slowed it down. Podcast hosts turned it into metaphors for contemporary life. Even late-night comedians covered it, but with astonishment rather than mockery. Specialists weighed in. A neuroscientist explained, watching 10 seconds of genuine stillness lowers heart rate and cortisol levels in viewers. Biologically, it feels like sacred music. A psychologist added, we're conditioned to expect conflict. When someone simply holds space, it resets us emotionally. In social media feeds, the hashtag #silent speaks trended worldwide. People shared personal stories. One commuter wrote, I pause my morning routine just to remember what it means to listen. A nurse posted a photo of an empty corridor captioned, silence saved more lives than any medicine today. The host, still processing, posted later that night, some moments are too human to script. Thank you, Leo, for teaching me that power lies in presence, not provocation. DiCaprio did not publicly respond, but his team released a single image the next day. A lit candle beside a closed journal, the cross laid gently atop its cover. The caption read simply, "You were heard." In the days that followed, the world seemed to pause. People organized silent vigils in city squares. Online forums dedicated entire threads to the meaning of stillness. Faith groups, secular organizations, and mental health advocates all quoted the same phrase. Sometimes silence is the most powerful answer. As the final scene, the narrator's voice returned over a montage of quiet moments. A child in a hospital bed whispering, "That's what calm looks like." A father embracing his daughter at an airport, both wearing crosses. Strangers on a rooftop at dusk, phones put away, simply breathing together. And finally, Leonardo walking alone through a sun-dappled park, the pendant resting against his chest. Perhaps this story was never about television, the narrator concluded, nor merely about one man. Maybe it awakened something within each of us, the kind of faith that doesn't need to shout to be heard.